So today in the garden, I have lots of tomatoes on my plants that need to come off. But I'm actually working over here because what I showed you earlier with preserving, oh, there we are. What I showed you earlier with preserving greens, as you can see, I keep cutting these same plants down. I can't even believe this. Like, honestly, there's less than a row of 6 feet of kale here and Swiss chard behind it over there. I have been cutting off of these plants all summer. We have had greens more than enough. Like, we're freezing it. We can't eat it all, and we eat a lot of greens. And they're still big and huge. So I've actually decided this is mid-September, and we only have about here probably another couple of weeks before potential frost at night. And I know kale actually and Swiss chard are really hardy when it comes to liking growing in the cold, and actually they are at their best when they undergo a light frost. So what I want to do is, these plants have done extremely well. I'm just going to use all of this, and then I'm going to actually plant some more kale and Swiss chard because it's going to grow throughout the next couple of months. We're going to get a little bit of frost. That's okay. They are going to thrive, and I'm just really excited to do that. So I wanted to show you how I cut my kale when I get to this point. I'll just explain the process. So here we go. So what I do is I just take a regular kitchen knife, and you can take some, what do they call it? Pruning shears, because the stems sometimes can be thick. These ones are pretty small, if you can see that. But I just take my knife and I actually cut it kind of right at dirt level. You don't want to use a great knife for this, just, whatever, a beater is good. But this is the easiest way if you're taking the plant out of the ground. This is the easiest way I have found to harvest it, because then I take some little scissors and I just cut each one. Just basically, I get rid of the stem so I don't have to deal with the stem in the house, and I'll just do this. It's actually kind of fun. I just go through and I cut them right where the sort of the smallest leaves are. Now I'm going to leave that one out because it's kind of yellow. I'll give it to the chickens. But yeah, just kind of like that. And the benefit of that is that if you can see this, actually I'll show you what I've done already. I've already cut these down. I will not pull those out of the ground. I'm not planting here per se. If I was, I would actually put my new seeds in just beside them and around them. The benefit of this is there is so much less soil disruption. I'm not ripping roots out and turning over everything inside. You want to just leave it. They've grown really well. I'm going to put my amendments just on top of the soil around the base of what I've cut here. So that might be some fertilizer, a nice well-rounded fertilizer, and some crumbled eggshells, which I like to put in my garden for additional calcium, especially when you're working with greens, because they will draw that up into their growth and you'll get greens that are nice and high in calcium. You always hear about the vegetables that we buy at the supermarket. Even though they're vegetables, they're not as good as they were because the soils are depleted and all of this. Well, that's not the case in a home garden. Your soils don't have to be depleted. You can add calcium and have very calcium rich greens, which is wonderful. And then I'm going to cover it with a little bit of compost. The nice thing too about doing it this way is, or the idea of permaculture, when you have animals, chickens or livestock, I give to the chickens and they will peck at it and love me, and it's just very enjoyable. What a great relationship. Nothing goes to waste. The stuff that the chickens will then give us as fertilizer goes back into my garden, so it's quite wonderful. I leave in the ground, you may think that's going to interfere when I go to plant again, but by the time I need to plant there again, they will have broken down and become food for the next crop, just like in a forest. Things that fall off of trees, leaves that fall off, they sit on the ground for a few months to a year, and because they're in the ground and there are organisms in the ground, they get eaten and broken down, and they turn into food for the next crop. So I'm actually saving myself work. I'm saving myself materials because I won't have to fertilize as much because I'll have a lot of organic, naturally organic stuff broken down in my garden. And I just like to keep the cycle as natural as possible. Really important thing to remember is you're going to need to keep these crispy. So harvest them as early as you can in the morning and do small batches at a time so that you can bring them inside and give them a nice cold water bath. So you're going to bring them in, and that does two things. Obviously it cleans the leaves, but it's also going to let them absorb the leaves because they've just been picked, so they're going to kind of suck up that nice cold water and they're going to get nice and crisp and stay that way rather than going limp from sitting in a bowl while you're doing a million other gardening chores. So time is of the essence when you're picking your greens, and a lot of other things in the morning. Most things do best when they're harvested first thing in the morning, but things like greens are sensitive to wilting. So get them in that ice cold water and you'll be good to go.